Tonight, it's the best jobs report in 2 years. Signs the economy is rebounding. But for the long-term unemployed, there is a new obstacle to finding work. I'm Erica Hill. Also tonight, massacre in Afghanistan. Thousands storm a UN compound, killing workers to protest a Florida pastor's burning of the Quran. A survivor's story. Stranded at sea after the tsunami in Japan, man's best friend is rescued 3 weeks later.
From CBS News World Headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening. Katie is off tonight. Slowly but surely, the U.S. economy is gaining strength. Today, the Labor Department reported the number of jobs grew by 216,000 in March, all due to private sector hiring. And the unemployment rate fell by 1/10 of a point to 8.8%. That is its lowest level in 2 years. Anthony Mason is our senior business correspondent. Anthony, today's report does show we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, Erica, the growth came across most industries as the job market showed increasing strength and resilience.
So can I ask you why you're looking to leave?
It's not unusual for the American Heritage Credit Union in Philadelphia to get 500 resumes for a job posting.
Why should we select you?
But with business growing, the company is hiring tellers, assistant managers, and a vice president.
We potentially could be bringing in 38 new positions by the end of the year.
Does it look like the economy is finally getting some momentum in jobs growth?
It looks like it when you base it on the last 3 months or so of data.
Economist Ellen Zentner.
We've had the unemployment rate drop a full percentage point very quickly over just 4 months. That's nearly unprecedented.
In February, employment increased in 35 states, the biggest overall growth coming in California, Pennsylvania, Florida, Texas, and Illinois. But more than 6 million Americans have been unemployed now for 6 months or more.
How long have you been out of work?
15 months, 15 long months.
Like Marianne Gannon, a former sales manager with a credit card company, who's joined a job search group in Westchester County, New York.
What do they have to contribute?
Do you think there is a bias out there against people who've been out of work as long as you have?
I do to a certain degree, yes. I applied one night to a particular company on their website, and 2.5 minutes later I got an email back saying, "Thank you very much. We've reviewed your application and resume and we do not feel it is a fit." Two and a half minutes at 11 o'clock on a Friday night.
In fact, on job websites, we found repeated postings for sales and management positions that required applicants to be currently employed. We reached out to 4 firms for an explanation, but none replied.
Even friends or neighbors or whatever around here, they're like, "You're still out of work?" You know, it's like, well, what don't you understand?
Yeah.
You know, the job market stinks.
In a new study by UCLA and the State University of New York at Stony Brook, researchers found clear evidence of bias towards unemployed workers, who the report says are often stigmatized even when they voluntarily left a position. Erica?
Bias is one thing, but could a company legally discriminate against someone for being unemployed?
Well, technically, if you advertise for this, it's not breaking any federal law. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, in fact, held hearings on this very issue back in February. They're examining it now to determine just how widespread it is and whether anything can or should be done about it.
Boy, last thing folks in that position need to hear.
Exactly.
Anthony, thanks. The improving job market may have given a welcome boost to the auto industry. March sales were up for the big 3 American automakers. In fact, Toyota was the only major car company to see sales decline. And as Ben Tracy reports, damage from the earthquake and tsunami in Japan could mean things will only get worse for Toyota.
At the Port of Los Angeles, this is a welcome sight. A container ship from Japan unloading its goods.
How concerned are you?
Very.
But Norris Bishton, who sells Toyotas in Marina del Rey, California, is still waiting for his shipment of cars. Since the tsunami, just 2 of Toyota's 21 Japanese plants are running. Honda, Nissan, and Mazda also cut production. An estimated 500,000 fewer vehicles have been made in Japan since the disaster. Norris says Toyota told him Southern California will get 30% fewer cars this month.
And so what does that mean for you?
Well, see these empty holes here? There's going to be a lot more empty holes in this area very shortly.
The Prius is only made in Japan. Norris normally has 70 of them on his lot. Now he has just 27. The other problem is parts. Many come from damaged suppliers in Japan.
So Toyota has now given its dealers this list of 233 parts they're not supposed to order unless they absolutely need them. This includes everything from struts to door panels.
Today, Nissan announced part shortages are forcing it to close 5 North American plants for several days. American car makers are also getting hit. Ford is shutting down this plant in Kentucky, and GM idled this plant in Louisiana. Both use Japanese parts. Many U.S. automakers are also running out of some black and red cars. The pigment for the paint is made near Japan's troubled nuclear reactor. Limited supply means prices are going up. A Prius cost $1,200 more than before the quake.
If you're a consumer looking to buy a car, well, that's going to either make what you want totally unavailable, or it's only going to be available in a used model. And the price of that will, frankly, probably be too much for what you want to pay, so you'll probably just have to wait.
Some vehicles were already in the pipeline before the quake, so the peak of the supply crunch isn't expected to hit dealerships for another 3 weeks.
We're all in the same unfortunate sinking boat.
Hoping to be rescued when their ship of cars finally comes in. Ben Tracy, CBS News, Los Angeles.
A gruesome scene today in northern Afghanistan where protests ended in massacre at the UN compound in Mazar-i-Sharif. Kelly Kobiea reports the protest was spurred by a Florida pastor who finally made good on his vow to burn the Quran.
The protests, several hundred strong, started peacefully. At the walls to the United Nations compound, the crowd turned. They ignored warning shots from police and stormed the complex, killing 4 guards, toppling a tower, setting fires, and attacking the UN workers inside. As many as 20 died in the violence. 2 of the victims were beheaded.
This was an outrageous and cowardly attack against the UN staff.
Thousands of Afghans marched across the country Friday chanting "Death to America." Outrage sparked by a familiar name, Florida pastor Terry Jones. Last fall, Jones vowed he'd given up plans to burn the Quran. But 11 days ago, Jones and his 15 followers held what they called a trial of Islam. They then burned a copy of the Islamic holy book in a barbecue pit near the church altar and posted the video on the internet. Without a hint of emotion in his voice, Jones told CBS News, "We personally do not feel any responsibility for the carnage in Afghanistan," then repeatedly condemned Islam. His conscience as clear as the anger of today's mob. Kelly Kobiea, CBS News, London.
To Libya now, and a sign perhaps that after 2 weeks of Allied bombing, Muammar Gaddafi may be seeking a way out of the crisis. A top aide to Gaddafi's son reportedly flew to London this week for talks with British officials. And today, Libyan rebels proposed a ceasefire, provided Gaddafi's forces pull out of key cities. That offer was rejected. The rebels were pushed back more than 100 miles this week, but today they appeared to regroup near Brega, and this time with some leadership, former Libyan military officers who've now joined the rebel cause. Elsewhere in the Arab world, a day of protest. In Jordan, the day's marches were mostly peaceful. But in Syria, the government continued its violent crackdown, which the White House has condemned. From Amman, Alan Pizzi reports on 2 very different protests.
The chant could come from any protest rally in the Middle East, change now. But the thousands who turned out after Friday prayers in Jordan don't want their king overthrown, just more political rights and an end to what many see as rampant corruption.
What's interesting here is the way these police are facing. Unlike in other centers of protest, the Jordanian riot police are on duty today as much to protect the protesters as to contain them.
It was the exact opposite in neighboring Syria. Protesters chanting, "We want freedom," were met with tear gas and even live ammunition in towns and cities across the country, including the port city of Latakia, Homs, the suburbs of Damascus, and significantly in Dara in the south, epicenter of the revolt which broke out nearly 2 weeks ago. More than 70 people have been killed in the upheaval so far, hundreds injured and hundreds more detained. The violence is a stark contrast to a pledge by Syrian President Bashar al-Assad that protesters would not be harmed. The protests are the most serious challenge yet to a political dynasty that has ruled for more than 40 years by using harsh repression and violent reprisals for dissent, which makes the determination of those taking to the streets all the more striking. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, Amman.
It's now been 3 weeks since the earthquake and tsunami ravaged Japan, and 3 weeks now that the damaged nuclear plant has been leaking radiation. Today, we got a new look at the Fukushima plant as Japan's prime minister vowed to get control of the problem. The government ordered the company that runs the plant to review how it measures radiation, saying some of its latest numbers on contamination have seemed suspiciously high. Radiation warnings have complicated the effort to locate victims of the quake and tsunami. Today, Japanese and U.S. military personnel began an intensive 3-day search along the battered coastline. 32 bodies were found, raising the overall death toll to nearly 12,000. But amid all the devastation and heartbreak, there is also one heartwarming story of survival. It's tough to miss a floating island of debris spotted by a Japanese Coast Guard crew, likely wreckage from a coastal town. And there, living among the flotsam, is a dog. The Coast Guard believes it was swept out to sea 21 days ago and somehow managed to survive. A rescue team is lowered, but the frightened animal ducks beneath a section of the roof. Risking their lives, members of the crew managed to bring the dog to safety. Once on board a Coast Guard ship, the animal seems remarkably healthy and happy, offering the rescuers, men who've seen their share of horror over the past 3 weeks, the chance to enjoy a light moment here as they feed the dog what's likely its first real meal in a long time. Alzheimer's isn't just brutal for the more than 5 million Americans living with the disease. It also takes a serious toll on those around them. Each Alzheimer's patient has about 3 unpaid caregivers, many of them family members who suffer along with their loved ones. Dr. John LaPook revisits a couple caught in the grips of Alzheimer's.
Come on, perk up.
I can't perk up.
During 5 decades of marriage, Mike Daly worked in law enforcement while his wife Carol worked at everything else.
She raised my kid. She had a job. She cleaned house. She did the wash. She made the beds. And she put up with me. All that's changed for us is the roles.
Now it's Mike who runs the house. He feeds Carol, even puts on her makeup. She has Alzheimer's, diagnosed 7 years ago. When I first met the Dalys in 2008,
I don't know.
Carol's memory was slipping.
Let me ask you a question. How old are you?
65. Yeah.
Now?
How old are you?
How old am I?
How old?
80? No, I don't know.
Even back then, this tough cop was feeling the strain.
And I saw a lot of stuff out there, but this is the worst. It's hard to deal with.
3 years later, Daly has gained 15 pounds, takes medications for anxiety and sleep, and knows he should exercise, but just can't find the time. Mike Daly is one of the nearly 15 million Americans providing 17 billion hours of unpaid Alzheimer's care a year. As a result, they're more likely to develop health problems of their own, such as depression and high blood pressure.
There are many cases that are reported where an individual becomes a caregiver for someone with Alzheimer's disease, and in fact they will die before the person with Alzheimer's disease because of the care-related stress.
Do you think this is taking a toll on you?
I'd probably be lying to say no, but of course, you know, it does take a toll. But it's life.
Finding that help early is going to give you the best opportunity to cope with the disease.
There's going to be a time, I know it's coming, when I will need help.
Meanwhile, the toll on him mounts as her condition declines.
That's the best I can do.
But their love remains stronger than ever. Dr. John LaPook, CBS News, New York.
If you are a caregiver for someone with Alzheimer's and need help, log on to WebMD.com, search Alzheimer's Care, and you'll find a list of resources. When we come back, Americans are driving like it's 1949. America's highways are getting more crowded, but they're also getting less dangerous. Traffic deaths last year were at their lowest level since 1949, the first year they started keeping track. As Jim Axelrod explains, while we are driving smarter, our cars are a lot smarter too.
The credit for making U.S. roads safer starts with aggressive new campaigns targeting dangers like distracted driving.
Persuading people to get cell phones and texting devices out of their hands when they're driving has helped us reduce some deaths on the highway, but we need to do more.
Other campaigns have already been successful. Seatbelt use is at an all-time high, 84%. Alcohol-related deaths are down 7% from the year before. The number of people killed on U.S. roads last year, nearly 33,000, was down 3% from the year before, even though Americans drove 21 billion more miles. It's high-tech safety features that have really made the difference. Check out electronic stability control. The top car has it, the bottom car doesn't.
Safety innovations we're proud of at Mercedes-Benz.
Many of the features have only been available on high-end cars.
I believe these kinds of technologies must become standard. That's when we begin to really change the numbers significantly.
Rick Paul from Consumer Reports says that is already happening.
This inexpensive Chevy Cruze only costs in the high teens, but it comes with several advanced safety features, such as electronic stability control, 10 airbags, including rear seat airbags, and even bags for the passenger and driver's knees.
Which means the good news should only get better. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, New York.
Well, technology aside, driving was extra tough today from Pennsylvania to Maine, as Old Man Winter had the last laugh on this April Fool's Day. Parts of New England got as much as a foot of snow. A Pittsburgh area ski resort that had closed for the season was actually able to open again for the weekend. That is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Erica Hill. Katie's back here on Monday, and I'll see you Monday morning on The Early Show. Have a great weekend.